Thank you very much to be here again. I'd like to welcome you to our 27th meeting of Working Under Conditions of War. And sad as it is that this war has continued for so long, despite some pumped up predictions by a certain totally corrupt, untrustworthy and criminal president, to be able to end it within a day, we do continue to meet on a regular basis and plan to do so even when the war has ended. In order to keep the link to the previous sessions, as it has become tradition, I will present to you a short summary of the case that we heard last time, presented by Natalia Narviako, who is a psychoanalyst from Kiev and the author of the book Psychoanalysis in Ukraine, Past, Modernity, and Future. Just wanted to say, you may have seen there's a small change. Peter Mühlmeier could not be here tonight, so Eva is going to do all the technological magic behind the scenes. And Françoise is contacting us from California instead from Paris. And Jerry Fromm again is here from Massachusetts. So welcome to you all. Natalia, if you may remember, presented a case back in April of a young 20-year-old woman with whom she had met for 16 sessions. They conducted all sessions in Russian on Zoom. She described her patient as Gothic, young-looking, living in Kharkiv at the time of their first encounter. The patient was extremely suicidal, attempting to kill herself in various ways at various times, but always surviving somehow by the edge of her skin. After her husband left to serve in the war, she began to drink and isolate herself more and more. She was estranged from her parents, very angry at her mother, and when her father died a few years ago, she couldn't bring herself to help her mother with the expenses for the father's funeral. She was tormented by depression and couldn't find a reason to live. She said there was so much evil around her and possibly inside of her that she repeated to try and kill herself several times. She had interrupted the treatment with Natalia after a few sessions, had not paid for the last one, but when she resumed her work with her, she apologized for not paying her last session and proceeded to meet with her, I believe, once a week. To our surprise, at least to mine, we learned that she now lives in Latvia, where she works as an IT specialist, and where in fact she lives very close to her sister and grandmother, whom she barely sees though. She's ashamed to be Russian and to speak Russian. She feels she has no homeland, no language, and is in search of an identity that could hold her. She felt that her life was on pause, as she said, and suspended in space. Besides work, her only activity are computer games, which she still plays at times with her husband via internet, a husband who's still serving in the war. Now, after hearing this case, and this is a very short summary of it, of course, Françoise Davoine suggested that this woman ought to draw a map of her life, pointing out the different landmarks in her life and drawing attention to the different languages she has spoken and heard, and the different territories she has lived in. Françoise also suggests that she make a sacrifice, that she finds a symbolic substitute for her losses, maybe in the way that she spoke to her pencils when she was young. She could now maybe symbolize all the human losses by speaking and symbolizing them with the cats that she was speaking to at home. The patient gave Jerry Fromm, though, the impression that she was fleeing from life and that she was entrenched in her transference with her therapist, where she bleeds in and out, holding her hostage to a deadly competition in the game of life. Some of us also did not feel especially empathic with this woman, as she had almost immobilized her therapy with her continuous threat of suicide. So we were trying to suggest to her therapist to sort of work more actively in the transference with her. So that was the case from last time. And tonight we will hear a case of another woman, for which by Katarina Danilewska, Oleksandr will present her. But just to say that in this case, there is an urgent question actually for us, because it's a woman who has cancer, who probably doesn't have very long to live. And Katarina wants to know in particular how to work with this case now, what ethical and questions of neutrality pose themselves, and how to work with such a difficult case during times of war. So we don't always get such a clear question from our presenters, so we're very pleased that she was able to verbalize this at this point. Oleksandr, I give it over to you. Oleksandr Filts, I blocked on your last name, I'm sorry, to present Katarina to us, who, by the way, was our very first presenter in 2022. So we're very happy that she's come back and will present us with another case.
So today we decided together that Katarina Danilewska is going to present this case. Katarina is a psychologist who is very active, working in different modalities, and she collaborates closely with our Psychoanalytic Institute, where she gives seminars and reading of literature, and also prepares problematic and interesting discussion. She has completed her education at our institute and also was a participant in a really interesting project where she was a psychodynamic supervisor for a kindergarten. That was really effective work. But right now she stopped working there for the lack of time. And 3 days ago, she prepared a really interesting seminar, really discussion-provoking seminar dedicated to one of the most relevant topics about our anxiety regarding the increase in digital psychoanalysis employing AI. That was a discussion that we had, and she presented everything beautifully, the instructions that are given and in these cases, and the problem that we were thinking about. It was maybe indirectly related to the war, because the clinics in Ukraine have very limited resource for financing of social programs, including cancer treatment. This patient, in fact, is a consequence of the cuts in financing, that she was not able to provide quality treatment, chemo for herself, but she continued fighting along with Katarina. And it's actually a case we've long wanted to present. It's the same patient, but with a totally different problem, which stirred a huge wave of discussions in our community. And I think that it could be formulated this way: is the setting for the patients, or the patients for the setting? That's pretty radical, but it already entails a part of the answer. So Katerina will present our problem, and we invite the audience to think about this topic along with us, and maybe provide your own professional recommendations regarding ethical problems with working with cancer patients and the setting itself. We really need your opinion. So please, Katerina. Good evening, colleagues. Glad to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Oleksandr. And the topic I would like to present today, it's already been described in part. It's about the setting, the lens of the human and the war. I'm sorry, my co-therapist is here. First, I'd like to formulate a few questions for consideration before I proceed to present the case. First, have you given present to your patients? Second, have you ever regretted it if you have? And the third question, would you do it again? Because I gave 2 gifts to my patients. And
Can you repeat the question?
Oksana,
Can you repeat?
Yes.
it was very hard to understand. If you could sort of slow down. I could
Okay,
understand all 3 questions. I'm not sure whether anybody else did so, because that seems very important to be able to.
okay,
know.
okay. The first question was, have you ever given gifts to your patients? And would you, did you do it twice? Would you do it again? Because I'm asking these questions because I gave a gift to my patient and then I did it again.
Okay.
Yeah, second question.
I'll remind you what I talked about during our first meeting when I was here 3 years ago. In 2011, this woman came to me. She was undergoing chemotherapy at the moment, and she had no hair while she was in the session. I see a comment regarding confidentiality. Yes, I asked my patient permission to present her case. This patient in the fall of 2021, she was saying that Banderites, which is like Ukrainian nationalists, are running around in Ukraine. And she said that while living in Russia at the time. She is Ukrainian and she married a Russian, so she was living in Russia. I told her then that I am another Banderite according to her logic.
I am another
Ukrainian nationalist, like that's what they call us, Banderites, after the name of Bandera.
Okay, okay.
And the understanding of Russians, these are really bad nationalists.
Yeah.
And we discussed that case through psychotherapeutic neutrality and my psychotherapeutic stance, if you remember. because it was extremely difficult to work with her at that moment.
Excuse me, was she the first patient you mentioned you presented
To us?
2 weeks ago?
Yes, yes, that's the one.
Okay, okay, good.
Okay, all right.
Good.
And I've fantasized about stopping working with her, or just throw my phone out the window so I didn't have to see or hear her.
What did you throw out of the window?
She wanted to throw out her
No,
telephone.
she felt like throwing her phone out the window.
Okay.
In our last session before the full-scale invasion, I just reacted really severely. And I told her, see you next time unless I get killed. After the start of the full-scale invasion, it took me 7 days to renew my psychotherapeutic practice, in part at least. And it took me 3 weeks to go back to my work with this particular client. I did not want to see or hear her, and she was the first to text me, and so we made plans to meet. And when we met online, I had to leave the country with my children, and I was having my psychotherapy sessions in Harry Potter's closet. That's the kind of accommodation we were having at the time.
You left Ukraine? You were no more in Ukraine? Okay.
Yes, I had to leave Ukraine with my children for some time. Patient told me that after the start of the full-scale invasion, she urgently left Russia and went to Turkey. That she was deeply shocked with all the events, and she would like to try to switch to Ukrainian while speaking with me. We continued working. In the summer of 2024, she was complaining about pain in her side.
Yeah.
She came to Ukraine, and it was found that she has a fractured rib, a fractured something else, and a lot of metastasis in all of her body and her bones. A fractured spine and a fractured rib, and a lot of metastases all over her bones. And she'd been in remission for 4 years, and now she was having a relapse. And in one of the meetings, she came to see me in person to my office.
With her son?
I'm sorry?
She came to see you with?
She came in person.
In person.
Offline, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we were saying goodbye, she told me it was really difficult for her to carry all her medical papers around with her. and that her doctor didn't allow her to lift anything heavier than 3 kilos to prevent any more fractures in her bones.
One question, where were you when she came to see you? You were back in Ukraine?
Yes, by that time I'd long been back in
Okay.
Ukraine. So when she came to my office, I just came back from my vacation in Turkey. And I brought a very nice and convenient like produce basket, the ones that Turks use to go shopping. So I got one for myself and I brought it home. It's like a card. And I already had one like this from IKEA, and it was really compact and almost new. So now I had two of them, two cards. And I thought that I did not need two shopping carts. So almost I gave this card to my patient almost right away. And so she started taking it shopping and bringing the green and the vegetables to make her smoothies for her healthy diet. We continued working. We talked a lot about death, about various dimensions of death. We talked a lot about my death. I live in a neighborhood where, in a district in Kyiv, where we get a lot of shellings and drones. And maybe you saw it on the news when the entire house was destroyed in Kyiv, and that was next to where I live. And when she was saying that, I don't know, she was saying to me, I don't know if we are going to see each other next time because I might die. In order to support her, I was telling her, I don't know if I will live to see you next time. Let's just agree that if we both live until our next session, we will see each other again. So we make arrangements from one session to another that we are going to still see each other. Last week, I came back from the group therapy project that was held in Chernivtsi region. That's in the southwest of Ukraine. This is where I get presents, where I usually get presents for my children at local shops. They're really nice and sweet. This time I got, I'm sorry, I got another additional present. She used to to come to the sessions with this little cushion shaped like a fox because she had trouble sitting down. Her spine hurt.
Say again.
She
The
was
begin-
bringing a cushion to the session,
a
like
cushion.
a fox-shaped cushion, because she had trouble sitting because she was in pain. Her spine hurt.
I'm sorry, Oksana, what was the shape?
Fox, like a fox.
Fox.
Un renard.
Fox.
Yes, a fox, like a fox animal shaped cushion.
Jerry, do you understand?
Thank you. Yep,
Wolff,
thank you.
she also likes coffee, but her doctors do not recommend that she drink coffee now. And thinking about all this, I bought this Huggy cat, probably a toy, and also a handmade soap with coffee flavor, well, coffee scent for the patient. She named this toy cat. She called it Kitty Cat, and it's supposed to be a boy. And so she takes him to her sessions now. And she says she gives her regards to my two cats, and I give my regards to her kitty cat, this toy cat. Last week she had another exam and they found metastasis in her head. And numerous metastases in her muscles and bones and liver. In lungs and in another breast. It's hard for her to leave the house. It's hard for her to be sitting up for a long time. She called up a courier to help her travel to live with her parents to the south of Ukraine because she needs help in her everyday life. She is 43 years old at the moment. She is often nauseous. She does not feel well. And I'm scared that one day she might text me saying that she can't make it to the session any longer. And it can happen anytime really soon. When she is unable to talk to me, I'd like her kitty cat to be next to her when I'm no longer able to be. As a kind of a transitional object. As a mold of our many-year relationship, during which we have been through a lot of things. And a symbol of my human love and gratitude to her. A gratitude for the way that we've covered together. That would be it.
I'm sorry, I think I missed that, Oksana. A way that you recovered together?
No, the way that they've walked together.
Yep.
Maybe you
Thank you
haven't.
very much, Katarina. I understand that your central question is what we think about you having given several gifts to the patient whom you've accompanied for such a long time. Are there maybe other questions as well on your part, or other questions from Françoise and Gerard to maybe get a little bit more background on the case before you maybe tell?
I think we are like judges, you know.
No.
And I think that the opposite would have been weird, that you wouldn't have given those gifts, especially in those circumstances. So, and stayed neutral or say, oh, you shouldn't do that. That was essential and vital to accompany her until the time where she is now, close to death. And you experience death together. That is what is not everyday practice. So you did exactly what it was to do, or you had to do. I don't know, Jerry, what you think about it.
Well, I actually, I don't know what to think. What I find myself thinking at the moment, Katerina, is about that walking together, the nature of that journey. And from one angle, it sounds like it was a journey from hating her to loving her.
That's fine.
And I'd like to understand that better. You know, what was the difficulty that led you, you know, not to want to see her? And, you know, what happened with that?
Yeah, that was precisely my question too. It's like, how did she change from a Bendite, Benderite, you know, where you were in 211, you wanted to throw away the phone, and because you couldn't bear hearing her, to this very loving walk with her, probably, you know, till the end of her life. What changed in the therapy?
I think it's like if your relationship embodies the evolution of the war at the same time, because 2 years, 3 years now, it tells a lot about the war.
Yes, another question I would like to present for supervision is perhaps you have some recommendations on the palliative supportive psychotherapy, if I can put it like this. We actually started working in 2018 before this accusation started. So when this whole thing started, when the accusations and labeling started, we'd already been together for 3 years. It wasn't the start of therapy that she.
I'm not sure I'm following that, Oksana. What did you say? Accusations?
Well, the accusations of nationalism, and it started later. They were 3 years into therapy already, when this whole hatred was, started seeping through Russian propaganda. Because we'd been together for 3 years, and we'd already formed an alliance. This is what held me together for the next 5 months when she was really going at it, accusing Ukraine, etc., and blowing my mind. Can I add a few words?
Of course, yes. Go ahead.
Problem is, I have to, because we had a discussion between orthodoxal understanding of therapy and maybe flexible approach. And the orthodoxal colleagues told us that we shouldn't drop therapy like this because it's like enactments, and there may be that these enactments during therapy are not acceptable. It's not clean work. Well, that was what our orthodoxal colleagues said. So we, in fact, had to turn to you to ask you about the way you see this, because that's how the very discussion started about psychoanalysis, times of the war.
I'm sorry, but Orthodox therapy is completely wrong in those circumstances. It works when there is neurosis and repressed unconscious and things are okay around. But in circumstances like the war, we are not dealing with the same concepts, and we are not dealing with the same field. And it's like if you apply classic physics of Newton to quantic field. It's completely wrong. And so we are in another, but all along our meetings now, since 24 or 5 times, we are in another field called psychoanalysis under conditions of war, as said Oleksandr. And in those cases, I see the gift. It's a gift. We could now a way to see them. It's like when you make an alliance, you give tokens. And here you have to have a very, very strong alliance against what's going on, death as for her, the cancer, and for you with the drones. And so you have to create and that is the essence of an alliance, to exchange gifts. I don't see the opposite would be completely scandalous.
Well, I find myself, in a sense, not wanting to take sides in this, meaning that my question is, how are you right, Katerina, and how are they right? I agree, Françoise, that wartime situation changes everything. I also agree that even if it weren't wartime, there is something about the shift from, in a sense, one kind of therapy to, I think you used the word palliative therapy. That's, there may be a different task there when it comes to palliative therapy. Now, that is being with someone who's going to die imminently. There may be a different way of relating, a different thing that you're doing, but what I really want to wonder about is what was the work to start with? What did she come to you for? What needed to be where was the pain? What needed to be understood? And where is that task right now? I mean, sometimes at the ending, it's an opportunity to put things in perspective. You know, the things you've been struggling with all along, and so there may still be a task about that, you know, for all I know, and that's what I find myself wondering about.
We had another question from Anna Kirchner, who was wondering whether there was a change in the transference once you switched from talking in Russian to talking in Ukrainian, where she asked you or said to you that she was going to try and speak in Ukrainian, whether that may be, if I extend that from what Anna wrote, whether that sort of paves the way to changing the whole transference relationship between the two of you, when she was no longer talking in the language of the enemy, but in the language of the victim.
And how this actually led to me deciding to continue working with her. She stopped calling us Benderites, and she stopped saying that we had it coming. And the fact that she switched to Ukrainian out of her own will, it was a bridge that allowed me to keep working with her at the time.
So maybe that was her gift to you, is that possible?
Yeah.
Those gifts are about exchange, right? And this was an important one, given that the war had started, that she was giving to you.
There was also a question about transference.
Yeah, whether the transference shifted at that moment.
Well, the transfer, sorry.
Yes, it did. And I shifted from this wish to never see her again. I started seeing her as one of our kin, as a Ukrainian who needs help. In returning to normal society and getting rid of all the propaganda that had been put in her head.
Transference was political at that stage. So it cannot be.
I didn't really have any questions to her as a person. I had issues with her political stance, not with her as a person. And when she came to sessions and broadcasting all the Russian propaganda narratives, I found it really hard to bear.
Yeah.
And I felt that she was a stranger and someone like an enemy. I wanted to throw her out.
Yeah, I remember at that time, we launched those meetings, and one of the first thing that Oleksandr Filts said, psychoanalysis under conditions of war cannot be neutral. It is another paradigm than the one that the Orthodox psychoanalyst following Freud strict photos. But I was thinking about, well, Ferenczi, who fought nicely against Freud by indicating another way in the 32. And 32 was also a period for Austro-Hungary under the Nazi.
But let me jump in here again. You know, a couple of things. One big thing, Katerina, which is we don't know anything. You haven't told us about her story and what her trouble is. What did she want help with? Now, to the moment you're talking about, it sounds like a moment, one could see it as a moment, yes, in which the war intervened, but the way the war intervened is it made you a Ukrainian and her a Russian. That is, it made you only members of a group, not individuals in a relationship. And so I wonder what happened in the relationship that you couldn't be people anymore. You had to be group members. Do you see what I'm saying? What was that about? Is that simply the effect of the war, or is that also something personal that happened between you?
Because let me just back up a little bit, because I think this very question you have, and I think it's really historically very interesting that you were our first presenter back in 22. This is precisely the question that Oleksandr asked me, and that was the cause of creating this series of working under conditions, because it was the question of language, it was the question, how can you really work under conditions of war with your enemy? And it seemed like she posed as an enemy very much in the beginning. So I think over the years that we've had these sessions, we've come to very much the understanding that, of course, other methods are needed. Presence can be given, videos can be shown, songs can be sung, everything that can sort of help shore up the person. But I think what interests me too is the guilt you felt for giving her the question, that how much that sank into you to think that you had done something wrong, not just once but twice or maybe 3 times. And how that worked, I think, is also really important. But I just wanted to mark that historical moment, and it's a wonderful coincidence, or not a coincidence, that this very question now comes back to us with you, who were the first presenter. But I think to understand it more fully and to get a little bit away from the question of whether it was right or wrong to give it the present, I think we most all agree of course, you were right to do it and you felt like it, but we want to, I think, hear more about the case and how it developed. And then I'm very aware that Michael wants to ask a question too, or make a comment. Michael Feldman.
Could you tell us a little bit briefly about the case? About the feeling of guilt. A few days ago, one colleague of mine, whom I told I bought a present for my patients, he asked me, "Are you aware of what psychoanalysis is?" That's that's like an illustration to my case. Tell us about her. Well, she came to me in 2018 for the first time. She was undergoing her first chemo for her breast cancer at the time. We worked on her experience of her disease and the threat of death, and we worked on all these things: her treatment, her fear of death, etc. Then we talked about her self-value and identity. Maybe you should tell us her story briefly. She comes from an industrial Ukrainian city, from a family, from a working class family. Her father would beat her up as a child. When she was 18, she was raped. And all her life, she studied and then she worked at a plant until she met this Russian man online and moved over to Russia to be with him.
Excuse me, she worked at the first place with whom?
She met this Russian man online. She worked at a plant.
Ah, a plant. Okay.
Plant, and then she met this man online and moved to Russia. And now the place that she used to work in is destroyed by the war.
And she was raped by whom?
А хто її? It was some random man she met while she was at the beach. Her parents were really strict and controlling. And even if she would go out to socialize with friends, she couldn't just sit and talk. They just had to do something, like to run and play with the ball, to play some games, not just sit around and talk. Maybe you have questions.
So there was a big shift when you change the question of political question of the names of the language created a shift in the transference. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that happened about 5 months before the full-scale invasion. That's when she started bringing all these propaganda narratives to the session.
Which were due to her relationship with this Russian man? And the plant?
Could you repeat this?
Was it linked to her relationship with the plant and the Russian plant and the Russian man?
At that, her husband was dead by then. She was just still living in Russia as his widow.
What happened to her husband, Katerina?
He he had a stroke and fell into a coma, and then he died.
And how long was she married to him?
Six years, I think, about 6 years. He died a year before the full-scale invasion started, and during this year she was living in Russia on her own. Can I ask something?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this sounds like a political transference. That's the first time I'm encountering this, but it really fits to this case because we have a lot of cases like this. We just have a huge number of cases. When the transference position shifts from really negative to understanding and maybe to even positive, but at first it's really not personified. It takes a long time to make it personified, to make it personal. That's the impression I have. It looks like it, because before she started bringing this propaganda to the session, our relationship had been really warm, and then it became warm again after she stopped bringing it to the session. I think that propaganda transference and countertransference, that sounds really interesting in terms of terminology.
Katerina, can you tell us roughly when she began to bring the countertransference in? Was it somehow around the time of her husband's death?
That was, I'd say, 8 months after her husband died. That was about 5 months before the full-scale invasion. At first, it was like in small bits, and then it became more prevalent.
Thank you.
Like she could come to the session saying that Russian language is repressed in Ukraine, and Ukrainian language is imposed in Ukraine, and how she is annoyed by that, and then she would just shift to her personal material.
But when, I'm confused now, when she went to Russia, she married a Russian man, or was her husband a Ukrainian?
Russian. He was Russian.
He was Russian.
Yeah, he was Russian.
And she came back to Ukraine
After his
after
death.
his death. Okay.
Michael, you've had your hand up, Michael Feldman.
Yes, thank you, Jeanne. I find this deeply fascinating and moving. I find myself trying to track the treatment and the discussion in the context of her body. If I understood, when you begin, the war is in her body. It's within her body. It's the chemo versus the cancer, if I understood that correctly. And as we know, chemotherapy is deadly. It's one attacking the other, hoping the body will survive it. And but it's it's a war based on a hope that it's the body that will survive the chemotherapy. I find that a compelling starting point given the context, because while she's undergoing this internal war, an external war breaks out or intensifies, because of course we in my country have learned, of course, that the invasion began 10 years earlier with the annexation, with illegal annexations, etc. So I'm thinking of cancer, metaphorically as perhaps we could say Russian or authoritarian. I think that's where the edge is leaning right now. But an interesting thing happens. Sorry, an interesting thing happens because the war against the body becomes a war in the analysis. And Françoise, I'm glad. I think you're smiling from what I can tell, because I'm reading notes from your book over on my other computer, History on Trauma, because it does seem that the war gets externalized from her body, psychic, intracorporal, to inter-psychic, and perhaps inter-somatic with you. And I find that, I don't know, for me, entirely consistent with the classical or fundamental ideas about psychoanalytic theory and practice. And I find that a sign of good work going on. It's even in the transference, countertransference. She wants something from you. And Jerry, I share Jerry's curiosity about what that is. On the other hand, you want to throw her phone, you want to throw your phone out the window to get rid of her. And I find that a compelling manifestation of transference, countertransference, and evidence that the war is now interpersonal between the two of you. What's trickier for me is the question of when did it change? When did that war between patient and analyst turn into something else? And people are asking that. Was it the change in language? Was it this, that? I don't know. I can't tell. But I also don't find myself distracted by that, or I don't know. It's not that I'm uninterested in it, but I gather it was subtle and nuanced, and you felt it, below the neck before you thought it above the neck, and began to try to sort it out. Because I think Françoise and I also both smiled when you mentioned her fox cushion. I'll let Françoise explain why I think we smiled with that. But I think it might give you a window onto what a creative technique you might employ now that you are doing, I think, the most painful work that is imaginable, which is to prepare for death. The death of the relationship brought about by the death of her, you, or even though. I think this is sacred ground, and it calls for a myth, for something epic, or even something from Antoine Saint-Exupéry, which is what I'm going to hand off to Françoise here, because I think that I've done this with people, and I think it might work in your situation in order to prepare for death, to employ a tool or technique that exists in The Little Prince in chapter 21, the first sentence of which, it was then the fox appeared. And I think looking at that together could be something useful for the two of you, because it's about loss and about psychic life after loss.
Thank you, Michael. I agree completely with what you say, except it's not only so painful. It is a long time, but we reach peaceful.
Yeah.
And it can exist, you know. I remember Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on Death and Dying. When I read it, it was given to me a long time ago in the United States, and I kept it. I did not dare to read that. You know, oh my God, Death and Dying. And it's very, very useful approach. She was one of the first to approach people dying, and she was rejected. How can you be a voyeur? How can you be, you know, it's like it's too horrible to approach. And she did that book, which helped a lot of people. How you can reach peace when they, not us, reach a certain place where they say yes for the passage. And instead of trying to, you know, no, you are not going to die, no, we help, we will, you will live, you will, she says that's not good at that moment. And I have at home Indian, it's not the two, it was from the Indians in the south of America, not Southern America, but in Texas or somewhere. And it's a labyrinth, which is on a basket. The labyrinth is the path for life. So you enter, you go this way, you go backward, you go, you know, like life. And on the center, there is a black place, which is death. And so you arrive near it. And instead of fighting, of course, you fought a lot. There is a little place where you withdraw peacefully for the passage. And she wants to, it's not a place where you are alone. You can be with her for that moment. That's what I thought. And thank you, Michael. The fox is also probably Little Prince, Le Petit Prince.
Would you recommend that chapter as its use by the analyst could introduce it? Is that something you would support?
The chapter, which chapter? The chapter when he...
It's chapter 21. And it begins with, it was then the fox appeared. And it's a brief summary to me of the story, because and Katerina and everyone, it begins with the fox promises to tell the prince a secret. It's clear that somehow the relationship is going to end, and the prince is sad and despondent. And rather than comfort, let's say, no, it won't happen, or something like that, the fox says, no, this is good. You have tamed me. You have tamed me.
What does it mean, tamed me?
Exactly. That's what the chapters, the prince says, what does that mean, to tame? And the fox says, it means every week we meet at the same time. And every week we must meet at the same time so that I can look forward to our meeting ahead of time and remember it afterwards. And this is the therapeutic, it's a great metaphor for the therapeutic relationship. And the fox says, you have tamed me. This is how it happened. The prince is reminded of his rose and says, oh, I think my rose has tamed me because of this. A difficult relationship. I think it does map on to many human relationships, including the one you're describing, Katerina. And then the prince promises to come back and share a secret. The secret is a device, it's true, but along the way he says, you know, when you're gone, I will look at the wheat fields. I think a very Ukrainian image, actually. I will look at the wheat fields and be reminded of the color of your hair. And maybe, I think there are a couple of other examples too. And it's clear that the fox will remember the prince after he's gone. And it's this remembrance which is, it seems to me, the key to negotiating loss in advance, ahead of time, through death. And then the fox will, I don't want to give it away because I want to let people discover it if they wish. But I think you might find something in there that resonates with this relationship, because that's what inevitably going to end. It ends in all analytical. Françoise, does that?
Yeah, and especially I was thinking, I have to find that for the next time. That Perry lost a brother.
Yes.
And he was present in the agony. And so the prince who comes back, and he has to remember his hair, the color of his hair, and is also about what you are facing now. That's a good, you're right. That's a very good way. He shows that's why it's so popular all over the world. He speaks to people who have to lose somebody.
Exactly. And I think you did such a nice job describing this case, Katerina, and the shared loss and the shared, I don't know, pain and resistance to it. When you're saying, if we're both alive, we'll see each other next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just strikes at the heart, and maybe a metaphor.
I could jump in here. I think it really is a very apt association, Michael, and a very lovely approach to the work at this point, I think. I do find myself wanting to kind of ground this a bit in her story. And you told us something, but just a little bit, Katerina. And so, but here's what I find myself thinking about her story. She comes to you at some point and says, Ukrainians deserve what they're getting. This is precisely what an abusive father says to his daughter. You deserved this beating. Oh, you went out wearing that clothes, you deserve getting raped. So what she brings to you, I think, is her abusive father. And says to you, you're getting exactly what you deserve. Why at that point? Who knows? She had just lost her husband, who was in a sense her escape from the abusive father. Who knows what that is all about? But that's what it seems to me she's doing. And that's what I think is getting tamed. And what happens instead of that now? Oh, you just sit and talk. That's the forbidden thing in her family. You're not allowed to just sit and talk, but you do just sit and talk. So there's a trajectory here from a family enactment to, in a sense, a kind of both a taming and a kind of assertion. It's okay to sit and talk. And that's what you do with her. I think, I think there may be moments to talk to her about this story.
Which story now? About her story or the story of the Petit Prince?
Oh, The Little Prince for sure, but also
Yeah.
her story.
Her own
You know,
story.
she's coming to a therapist, not a clergyman, you know, not a nurse, you know, and I assume she's coming because of the story she's lived, which I think is captured in a lovely way by The Little Prince. And there may be a moment to talk to her about that story.
Can
You know,
you tell us?
I don't know
isn't-
where just
Yeah.
one final, I don't know where her parents are now. Are they alive? Are they part of her dying process?
She comes from parents every week to see Katharina, is what I understood. So when you were saying the wheat fields in my, imagination, I thought she passes through them to come and see you. Because she's saying, right, she moved more to the south of Ukraine where the parents are, and that the trip to get to you is a long one, right? So I'm thinking that that's another gift from the patient to you, the way she travels to see you every week. But we should give you some space this is a lot to take in, what Michael and Françoise and Jerry.
Just a question. What does mean this verb to tain? Because
To
I read The Petit Prince in French, so I can't imagine what it means.
Je vais regarder. Je regarde.
Apprivoiser. Françoise,
Apprivoiser. Ah, yeah, that's
Françoise,
apprivoiser.
c'est apprivoiser.
Très bien.
Apprivoiser. Ah, d'accord.
From wild
Merci.
to domestic, from
Merci. Ça va? Ça va.
enemy, from
I
enemy.
recognize it.
Okay.
Thank you. So you tainted each other during the whole time. Vous vous êtes apprivoisé.
En français, on dit?
Apprivoisé, yeah. On dit. We have in the transference, we never speak about that, but we taint to each other along the way. And that's why it goes up and down, and we want to throw the patient out of the window. And it's a process like apprivoiser. I like that word.
Same horses.
Katharina, do you want to say something to what you heard from Michael Feldman and Françoise? Is there any other information you might want to tell us about?
Paradoxically, I forgot that this ethical problem had existed in the first place. I just plain forgot about it. Because the war started in 2014, and listening to your reflections, I was hesitating to take her into therapy, considering the fact that she was living in Russia.
Mm.
The long way.
And then I decided to take her in because she was Ukrainian. And I just thought that I would try to support her Ukrainian identity so she can broadcast some of Ukrainian narrative in Russia. I could really relate to what Jerry said about her personal story. How she would come and berate me and tell me that we had it coming, that it's our own fault. And you were pretty accurate in reflecting my feeling that we tamed each other. This is how I experience it.
Maybe the only thing left to tame is the superego side of you that felt that you were doing something terrible by giving her 3 gifts in a row.
Yeah.
Gifts that were very sensitive. No, how do you say that? Were chosen with great sensitivity and very and chosen very much in connection to her body. Right, first the one of the baskets so that she wouldn't have to carry so much, then the coffee, which was also a sign of the loss of something she had loved. So instead of the coffee, you gave her a soap that smelled like coffee. And then this fox cushion, which when I explained it to Jerry, when he didn't hear fox, I made a heart, because isn't the face of a fox a little bit shaped like a heart? So I mean, they were really chosen with great sensitivity, but
Yeah.
what interests me is why did the superego remain? Why did you feel so guilty doing what you did with all the sensitive work? What is it there? Is that maybe psychoanalytic propaganda against a more humane, is that the Russia and the Ukraine? In a way, is that a metaphor for the two? Do you still have to act on the very strict Russian propaganda, not giving presents and etc., or can you lose a bit your stand and feel completely fine about having done what you do and doing it?
Thank you, Jeanne. I appreciate very much what you say, and I would just add a little detail. One, while Katharina, you were speaking about giving her the basket, it was just after you said that she was overwhelmed by kilos and kilos of how you call it in English, the dossier, her medical
Reports, medical reports.
And that was a language, gesture language. We not only speak with words, we always speak with facial expressions, tone of voice, our eyes, and also our gestures. And you gave a gesture very eloquent. Take a light basket. I give you a light basket, instead of all those tons of medical and also political pressure. Thank you, Jeanne.
Dossier.
Well, I want to toss in an association I'm having to one of my mentors and one of Françoise's very good friends from ages ago, a man named Martin Cooperman,
Oh, yeah.
who was a psychoanalyst, worked for a long time with very psychotic patients. And he had these sayings, these short sayings that were full of clinical wisdom. And one of them was, the patient comes with her symptoms, the therapist comes with her technique, and if things go well, they both come out from hiding. Now that doesn't mean you're giving up roles, but it does mean there are moments when you're speaking from role, but person to person.
Yeah.
And the reason it occurs to me right now is what you said a minute ago, Katerina, which is she came to you as a Russian and you came to her as a Ukrainian. And I wonder if the trajectory of the treatment is you both came out from hiding as people. At some point she says to you, I'm Russian, you're Ukrainian. I'm not going to submit to you. Maybe you should submit to me. But somehow over time, you've gotten past that, beyond the political designations, to relate person to person. And of course, probably it's what's happening to her body that has, made that happen. But it has a quality of coming out from hiding in political roles and political feelings to actually be in the room with this sick person.
She never actually thought of herself as Russian. Because she is Ukrainian. She never said it otherwise.
Did she talk about her years in Russia? I mean, I also had the thought that maybe after she had been raped, the father had abused her. She falls in love with a Russian guy and maybe sort of thought that that was some sort of security, you know, that sort of like a very, you know,
I joked once and I said that you married into a really far away Russian city to get away from your parents' control. Well, the city she moved to was really far away from Ukraine. I'm especially thankful for this term, psychoanalytic propaganda. That was spot on.
yeah. So we have taming, we have psychoanalytic propaganda, and we had something about transference too, that I think Oleksandr you coined. What was it?
Political transference. Jerry said
transference.
that.
Yeah, political transference. Very good. Anybody else from the audience, please raise your hand if you have other comments or questions or remarks to make. You don't have to use the chat so we can hear you.
If I might just add on that, I think that to be, and I'm interested in the French as well, but to be tamed is to come out of hiding. And I think what Katerina has also described is the very process that Jerry is alluding to in his mentor's words, that when, in my opinion at least, when psychoanalytic treatment works, two people come out of hiding. It often perhaps occurs through transference, countertransference, but it doesn't end there. I think that's the vehicle of psychoanalysis, we might say, at least in the classical form during peacetime. But I think that Katerina also has gifted to us a real analysis in wartime, where I think the compression of time is all around you, compressed time or compression of time, and during which all of these things have to take place. And we know under the best of conditions that's challenging, but under conditions of war that are beyond what many of us, myself included, could even imagine, I think that you introduce reality very, conditions force you to, and I think you do that. So I want to, I don't know, add reality to Jeanne's growing list of keywords here: external, internal, political, I've learned from Françoise' work about social reality, social links, and the need to preserve them in order to protect the psyche from madness. And so that there are two subjects in this analysis, and both subjects are come out of hiding.
Yeah. Cooperman used to say, quoting with a quote that Jerry gave us, it started with the psychoanalysis of psychosis takes a week.
Takes a what?
A week
A psychoanalysis takes a week.
for psychosis or trauma, but it takes years to get to that week. And then exactly what Jerry said, both come out of hiding. But you know, Martin Cooperman was a veteran of Guadalcanal. He was a military surgeon who was on the Wasp, a carrier, how do you say in English, a boat to carry planes, which had been sunk. And he was always saying, you have to know how to swim, you know, you are an analyst. And second, I was thinking of Bion, who says, you are not an analyst always, like all the people, the orthodox, who say, you don't give gifts, that's bad. You know, there are analysts stuck on their, you know, like a diagnosis. And he says, you become one. You become one at some critical points, or you become. And I think this is the lesson of all our meetings, one after one, since June 22. They show how you, one after the other, become an analyst in that situation. And so don't give I was becoming vulgar, don't give any importance to what is told to you. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do. Do it as psychoanalysis.
You know, the other thing that I thought of too when Michael was talking about reality, is that I think what you're also introducing is the absolute clear reality that every time the session is over, as you said to her, you really do not know whether you will see one another again. So, you know, there's a real end to every session. And you can't, as we analysts in peacetime often do, I do it, I say, I'll see you next week, or I'll see you tomorrow, or that. Strictly speaking, you cannot do that. And strictly speaking, we shouldn't do it either in peacetime. And so I think that there's an incredible acuity to you really working from session to session and ending that session and really not knowing whether there's another one. I think that makes the sessions you have with her incredibly important and precious.
That's very important what you say, Jeanne, about the time.
Yeah.
In peacetime,
end.
next time there is continuity.
Yeah. No, there's a
Then
real
next time can be death. So, and Bion, you know, those two, Cooperman and Bion was a veteran. He worked at that because he had gone through war, First World War. That special temporality has to be in the present. You know what? He quitted his first analyst. After the war, he was 20. He went to analysis. And the first analyst was Orthodox. He couldn't bear him, and he nicknamed him FIP, feel it in the past. Because probably he was telling, oh, your mother, how was your mother? And your father was complex. Feel it in the past. I don't know. Feel it.
Feel it in the past.
Not feel,
But
but
we also
feel.
feel it in the past. Feel. It could be
Mhm.
also that, you know. Where is the present time? He was bringing his war, which was omnipresent. So that's why he's a good advisor for us, for you in the war.
I don't know if we still got John because I would like to add something.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, we do. In this case, we do.
Well, listening to you, I got me thinking that a few months ago, there was another period in our work when I was fantasizing about stopping working with her. When I understood where it was heading to, and I understood that what I saw what was in stock for me in therapy, and I was not really willing to go through that. In one of the sessions, I even suggested that maybe you would like to switch therapists and try and like an onco-psychologist, and she refused flat out because I was also feeling sorry for myself for what I had to be going through with her for quite a while. That's honest. Yeah, this is where I feel my badness.
No, why? It's not a badness, it's the limits. You feel your limits. Limits is when you cannot go further and we want to stop. And this is the very moment when we have to invent, create in that space beyond our limits, between her and you. You know, this is the analytic place by definition. After, it's always the same for me when I want to stop. I want to send the person to the hospital. Psychiatrist will be much better than me, and I want to get rid. And then it's my limits that she's testing, because she's not neutral either. She's testing my limits. She's analyzing me. That's what Ferenczi would say.
Yeah, and
Jerry, yeah.
and wouldn't you also say, Françoise, that in the language of Thomas Salmon, this is the immediacy.
Exactly.
This is the interference, not the transference. The interference, meaning the between transference, meaning that she too has moments of not wanting to see what's ahead. She too feels sorry for herself about the things she's going to miss, etc., etc. So these are moments of finding creative ways to bear these together. In a way, if you criticize yourself for having the feeling, in a way, you don't want to criticize her for having the feeling too, and she does. So, you share it together. Find a creative way to do that. Yeah, and in your gifts, you did in a certain sense. When you give the basket, you're saying to her, we can carry something together.
Hmm. Well, and she had 2 baskets, right? Yeah.
Gary, could
Well,
you define
yep.
interference?
This is a word that Françoise and Jean-Max invented.
What?
It's basic. This is a word that you and Jean-Max invented.
Which word?
Interference.
Yeah, interference.
And we've had conversations about, well, in English, it doesn't mean exactly what they want it to mean.
Yeah.
But what it means is the immediacy of the transference that both people are having. Maybe the transference to death.
No, but you know, we picked it in the quantum mechanics. Erwin Schrödinger said there is
Good Austrian, please.
and our sons who are more scientific than us were saying we were completely wrong. But we love the word.
Like interpsychic, interference.
Yes. It means more the between transference. And I like the
Not the over.
you use the word coincidence, Françoise, the coinciding of feeling. If you have it, she probably has it. If she has it, you're going to feel it too. That's what it means to be at the front, I think.
This is quite a collection of terms today. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes, Katharina.
Sometimes I think that we're looking for very creative ways to contemplate death. For example, once I told her, there's this idea that hell is on earth, and only the best ones can earn their right to leave this life, this hell on earth. And in the last session, she came and said, oh, no, awful things are happening in the world. I just don't want to keep seeing this. Sometimes I just wish I could die so I don't have to look at this anymore. I understand that this is her defense mechanism, but this actually is different from what she used to say about her death.
I didn't look at the chat, but there are, Diana, there are two messages by Maria in Ukrainian, and there's another one by Natalia Bishenko. And Michael has sent us a copy of the chapter 21 of the Petit Prince. Could you read us, could you translate for us the messages in from Ukrainian?
Sure, I can. Oh, that was about the permission to describe the case, the first one, and then there's one in English.
Right, that one
the transference, yeah, you discussed that already.
I saw, but the other ones.
Okay. Okay, another question was, do you blame your patient for marrying a Russian, a person who was living in the east of Ukraine in a neighboring territory with Russia at the time in 2018? Do you judge her for that? So that was the first question. Hello, Katya. Thank you for your presentation, but it's hard for me to speak. That's why it was easier for me to translate it, just to make it sound well. I had this feeling that something was happening between you two, something that's really hard to contain. And I guess it's hard to say in words. That's why these very functional presents came along. They were really helpful. They sort of resonate to the very need of the patient, but it's also her it's also her transference, the climax of it, because it's as if her transference was in aggression. She came with this violation of her body boundary, and this resonates with the rape that happened to her and to the disease that she started fighting. And another stage is in my head, these two things resonate: her relapse and the climax in her transference, the way she experiences the things that might happen to her. I don't know if you could hear me well. Thank you.
Mhm.
I will translate to you what was written in the chat. Okay, so this seems to be the climax of the transference. The patient is fully identified with her therapist now in her language, in her views, and she literally builds the therapy into her own body through the presence that she receives. She can unconsciously experience death as a proof that there was no love there, and the death as the only form of total fusion. So if you cannot be with me, I will take you in and take you along with me. So perhaps this is something that's hard to contain and express in words, because that's why the material things came along, the functional presence, the presence that are actually practical and helpful.
Well, there's another thing, I mean, since we're so much into language tonight, which is wonderful, is present in English, there's presence and present. And it sounds like you chose presence, such as the basket and the fox pillow, that she can carry back and forth, sort of to make a present of your past presence at home. And then she takes, I would imagine, both again back to you. So there's a way in which she can remember you when she's with the parents, but she can also take something from the parents back to you. So there's an interesting connection she can build with these presents between the present and the past.
That's very good. Present is to make yourself present to the
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So
never.
close in English, right? Present and present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Natalia, your comment takes me to a certain place, which is if there's truth in something about, in a sense, the way in which her father or this abusive man that raped her could take possession of her body, if there's truth in the link between that and the cancer in her mind, then it seems to me there's something in here where, I mean, I don't know if she feels this or not, but where it leads me is to a position of, you don't deserve this cancer. You don't deserve it. You know.
Mhm.
One
And
never.
maybe your way of being with her is conveying that all the time.
That's something she often says, that she does not deserve this. She did nothing to deserve this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
young.
That applies to war also.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we have to slowly come to an end. Is there any more comments? Françoise,
Yes.
may I say something to you too, Oleksandr? Please don't go when we end. Yeah, I have something to tell you. So, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to thank you tonight because our arsenal has grown by a third. Political, by three concepts, like political transference, interference, and psychoanalytic propaganda. I think that these terms are provocative, but the novel terms are born as an invitation to think, and then all of a sudden they become terms. Like someone joked that there's something called Bitcoin, and then it became a huge reality. And I think that all words are coined like this, and I'm wondering what destiny awaits these terms, and they were born here at our platform. I find it really interesting. So I'd like to thank you all for this, and also I will have to reread The Little Prince again.
Me too. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to just say at the end that we talking about present, and we also can talk hopefully about the future, that we will have our last meeting of this season on July 3rd. The first Thursday in July. We couldn't arrange it otherwise, and in June. So we'll meet July 3rd, and I do think that Oleksandr Filts will finally present a case of his, which he had hoped to do for a long time. Yeah.
I will. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Katarina, for your
Yes, thank you very much.
really.
Thank you.
And I mean, it's amazing to me how much history is playing today. You having been the first presenter and now the 27th presenter, so there's history there too.
Thank you,
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry, as always. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Françoise, and thank you, Oksana, and Marie, Eva, you did a wonderful job.
Eva, yes.
In the back. Thank you, Julia. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All the hearts.